Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Saurin Shah, President of MidCap Equipment Finance. Thanks for joining me, Saurin.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
It's great to have you on the program, sir. It was good to see you last week in Chicago for the funding conference. I know you and I probably recently just met over the last couple of years. I think when you attended one of the EF Cares golf tournaments. So looking forward to learning a little bit more about your career and MidCap Equipment Finance.
That's great. I've never done one of these before. It's kind of exciting.
All right. Well, hopefully I set a decent bar for the others.
You're like the celebrity of our equipment finance industry, so I'm just happy to be part of it.
God, I'm blushing. Well, hopefully I don't let you down here, man. We'll see if you still feel that way in the next 30 minutes.
All right.
All right. So for those individuals who haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and your career to date in equipment finance?
Sure. So like Jesse said, I'm Saurin Shah. I'm the president of MidCap Equipment Finance. We're a large ticket leasing company based in Wilton, Connecticut. We've been in business for about 3.5 years now, focused on providing large ticket leases to companies located in the US and Canada. We really don't have any sort of industry specific criteria. We're sort of generalists, and we are really, out trying to find companies that can use our financing support for growth, as well as to refinance existing debt. We're just looking for the right type of structures to get into as we grow our portfolio. Prior to MidCap Equipment Finance, I had started Nations Equipment Finance back in 2010 with 5 other partners. All 6 of us that started Nations were from GE Capital. And so we have a lot of experience and roots in equipment finance for many years. And so we're kind of leveraging a lot of that expertise and continuing to march forward in this ever so competitive landscape that we're in right now. But MidCap has been around for 3.5 years, and we've been growing very nicely. Our team's been growing, our portfolio's been growing, so we're really excited for what comes next.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And how did you come across the equipment finance industry back in the day? Was it you said GE Capital was just naturally kind of just like, hey, I guess how'd you find GE Capital?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a really, I think a very different story. I'm an engineer by degree. I graduated Purdue with a bachelor's in engineering and material science. When I was in college, I did a co-op program with GE on the industrial side. And so after college, I got an offer to come work full time. And it was actually, part of one of the leadership programs that GE was pretty famous for. This was the technical leadership program. It was really designed for engineers to get exposure to a lot of different businesses within GE in a short amount of time. And, eventually you hope you find what you like, and then you land there and you start to build your career from there. What happened for me, I did a few years in engineering, and then I went to work for the corporate audit staff, and that's also another very select group of individuals within the GE company at the time that was, parachuted around to all the different GE businesses to help, audit the books and records, and sort of be as a liaison to the official auditors that were looking at the books for GE. So again, it was another leadership training ground, gets you exposure to a lot of different businesses. It just so happened that one of my assignments on corporate audit staff was to audit commercial equipment finance, which is one of the businesses within GE Capital. And so that's where I came to GE. I spent, 4 months looking at the books and records of GE Capital. I met with a lot of the leadership team at GE at Commercial Equipment Finance. And then, I really got the bug at that point that, I have all this engineering background and I could have definitely gone back and done that type of work. But, working in finance, especially equipment finance, was appealing to me. But I also knew that I really didn't have the background to really accelerate in that career path. So I actually went to NYU for my business degree. I actually did it at nighttime while I was working for GE. I took one of these quality roles, Six Sigma. I mean, everything that I've just told you is like the entire Kool-Aid package from GE. Like you name it,
Sure.
I did it. So I was a Six Sigma black belt. I did that for a couple of years while I was getting my business degree, and then once I completed my MBA, I started as an analyst, an associate on the credit side at Commercial Equipment Finance. And from that point forward, just kept learning credit underwriting, getting a lot of deal experience, and then just getting promoted through the ranks, and developing my expertise to underwrite equipment finance credits.
Perfect. And has always, I guess, traditionally been in the more higher ticket items.
Not really. GE did a lot of, I would say like maybe like $1 to $5 million type transactions. There definitely were groups within GE that would do larger transactions, but when it came to purely like equipment finance transactions, they were somewhat smaller. There was a few groups within GE Capital. One specific that I worked for was called Capital Funding. Capital Funding did all sorts of things. Although it was under the umbrella of commercial equipment finance, we did senior debt, we did second lien term loans, we did equity co-invest. We did so many different things that was just not traditional to equipment finance. But
Sure.
for me, from a credit perspective, this was like invaluable because, you got to see so many different types of companies, different types of deal structures, and, a lot of experience to be gained from that.
Perfect. Yeah, I know when we were talking last week, you mentioned the GE, and then I saw it on your LinkedIn profile. It's kind of one of those discussions where leadership training like that, or I guess training like that in general these days, almost is non-existent. For
Yeah,
some of our younger professionals we have coming up. Just kind of want to get your
yeah.
thoughts.
It's so true. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I went to Crotonville a bunch of times. I took all did all the leadership training. I got, because of these training programs, they got you in front of, senior management at a very early stage in your career. And so, you get put into positions where, you really do get an opportunity to learn the ropes, opportunity to shine and build that confidence, in your leadership, and then developing, developing all the skills needed to be a good business leader. So I wouldn't trade that for anything. I think that all of those experiences have helped me, at every stage along the way.
Sure, sure. And I guess since not a lot of organizations have that today, how do we look to try to give some semblance of that to the younger generation coming up through the ranks?
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I don't, like I often think about that a lot, when I'm trying to get, junior guys excited about equipment finance, and they may come with a finance background, and that's all great, but you're asking them to choose equipment finance over maybe going to work for like a Wall Street bank or a hedge fund or private equity or all these different, you know, uh, jobs that have a lot more appeal than equipment finance. So yeah, we do have to work a little bit, to sort of create an environment that is exciting for junior people to come in. But again, we try to find people that are really good thinkers, people that have good analytical skills, and you know, just like me. I mean, I was an engineer. I didn't really know this kind of stuff, but you just sort of learn it on the job, and as long as you can. As long as you're capable of doing that, then we want you, because then we'll just teach you exactly how to do this job. And I think there needs to be more of that, mentorship style of training to keep the younger people engaged and participating in our industry, for the long term.
Sure. No, same page. And then Are you guys 100% in office? Any hybrid, like
You know,
I guess from a work environment perspective?
yeah, look, I think that I've always sort of been of the mindset that, we'd like to have everybody in the office for majority of the time. And so, the core group is in the office, Monday through Thursday. A lot of people are off on, work from home on Fridays. Obviously, our remote people are 100% remote, so that's fine. It's usually the salespeople, and that makes a lot of sense. But I've always enjoyed having centralized, you know, um, credit and operations and finance, and I think we've sort of preserved that, in this company. It's been the same that I experienced in at Nations, and we sort of kept the same model for MidCap.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I always have to ask those questions because at one point during and after COVID, the pendulum was like, oh yeah, let's just work from home, but equipment finance is like business essential. So it's like,
Yeah,
no, let's stay here. And I think people were just like, okay, well, how do we retain some of this talent, but they might be in other parts of the country. Um,
yeah.
Growing a younger workforce in a remote environment, I think just adds more complexity.
I've been very fortunate that majority of my team are folks that I work with at Nations. And so, you know, we have a 10 plus year history, a working relationship, which, um, you know, it sort of makes it a little easier for me to operate in a more virtual or flexible work environment, because I trust all the guys that I work with, and but that works for the senior level people. I feel like that model is fine and acceptable, but younger people, I still believe that they're going to learn most effectively and with some speed if they're in office, and working side by side like a senior underwriter that's, examining a transaction, or, having a diligence meeting or whatever the case might be. Like that in-person contact is super important. And I think that's what we're trying to, that's what we're trying to drive to do.
Absolutely. I mean, that knowledge transfer, sharing, or just that building the sense of team and camaraderie that you get by being in an
Yeah.
office is it's impossible to
And look,
replace.
we're a small team. We've kept it small purposely. We're trying to basically, be as efficient as possible. So, when the doors are open and people are talking about different things that are going on, everybody lends a hand somewhere or another, and they just want to be part of the conversation, be like, oh yeah, I know this. I can help you out here. I could do this. I could, that kind of thing doesn't happen when you're not in an office setting. And so, we're really trying to promote that. It's just good for the overall growth of the company, the culture, like you said. And I think that people need to feel like they're part of a team.
And then, I'm going to pivot to the next question here. So, from a leadership perspective, obviously, you have the education background, the training, the Six Sigma, dual degrees. So, you check all those boxes. 3.5 years into running an organization, being like the president, um, you know, was there any nerves kind of stepping into those shoes, Serene, with the team that you've been with for so long, or just trying to? I always like to ask those questions where it's just like, hey, like, because myself as a leader of an organization, I'm kind of stepping into it as an army of one, slowly starting to build it. So it's a little different. But I always like to ask those questions to leaders in our industry, where what was that transition like? Um,
Yeah, look,
it's your show.
yeah, and there's all of that and then some. I think that, I do take a lot of the, I would say, pitfalls of prior experiences, and I try to solve for them in the current environment. And I think I definitely have done that with MidCap. There's a lot of things that we are doing differently than in my prior experiences, going all the way back to the GE days. And so, we learn from prior experiences, develop a viewpoint of what we think would work going forward. But, there's always risks associated with that. putting an entire business plan together, raising the equity and the debt, like building a company, then going out and hiring a team and putting the whole infrastructure in place to operate and start to provide financing and build a portfolio, manage all those assets. There's so many different things that go into it, but I take comfort in the fact that I'm working with a team of individuals that are just like rock star individuals. They're really, really good people first, and then very experienced in equipment finance. And that gives me a little bit of it takes the risk a little bit off of my shoulders that we're going to be able to perform and do the task at hand. And then, the other thing that I often worry about is like, I'm building this enterprise and I'm growing the team, and I got to make sure that this is successful, because now we have, more people on the team. They're depending on the success of this organization. So yeah, of course, that's going to sort of ride on me to make sure we're doing the right things. But, so far, I think it's been a good balance of, leaning on the team leaning on me, and we're basically building this company together.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And then congratulations. I was going through this recently and saw that you guys cracked the top 30. Now, pardon my ignorance here. It only shows that you guys weren't on here in 2023. So was this the first time that you
First
guys made
time.
the top independents?
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. Look, it's been a great run for us so far. It's been fun, and we've had good success, and it's nice to be recognized. I always enjoy, my time with the Monitor and doing interviews and things like that along the way, and kind of sharing the story. And, this is just, the last one that, I hope there's many more. I want to keep going, and keep getting our name out there, and keep sharing with our industry what we're doing.
And then, I guess let's talk about the industry, right? I think, I don't know, from what I saw last week at the conference, it seemed like the sentiment was relatively positive. I didn't hear a lot of negativity, such as last year. I think people are still cautiously optimistic. Finance, I think we're always going to have some level of optimism, but just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts are, where things stand today in equipment finance.
Look, our pipelines have been pretty busy. We had very busy Q1, and now halfway through Q2, and things are still busy. Um, I would say that we are looking at every transaction through a few different lenses than we were, last year. Definitely all this discussion about tariffs and examining supply chains, and trying to understand where sales are going. Are they domestic? Are they international? Like, those sort of conversations are definitely taking place on new business, but then we're also going back through our portfolio and making sure that we understand, for each one of the credits that we're in right now, what their drivers are and what their dynamics are, and just try to have these conversations earlier than later. Now, I think a lot of the times, you can't make too many decisions quickly, because it feels like things in Washington are changing quickly, and you start to make some plans and you head down one direction, and then a tweet or whatever comes from Washington and everything kind of changes, right? So I think that is why it's sort of steady as she goes, and would kind of see where it takes us. I don't really think people can make too many, major shifts or pivots in strategy yet. Maybe 3 months from now, once there's more clarity, people will have a good goal of what to do. But I think macro, like long term, this idea of sort of reshoring and bringing manufacturing base back to the United States, that can only mean good things for the equipment finance industry. I mean, somebody's got to help finance all of the equipment that's needed to build out all that manufacturing capacity. So, whether it's the small ticket all the way to large tickets, that we should all be getting our fair share of business from that onshoring trend. Um, yeah, that combined with possibly, lowering interest rates, to sort of keep our economy from going into a recession. All of these things will be beneficial for equipment finance to really be successful. It's always been, it's at least it's in my history or looking backwards in time, equipment finance does um, sort of counter to the macro trends in the environment. I think, when times are bad, people look to leasing, as a way to sort of preserve liquidity and keep the can moving down the road, kick the can down the road, so to speak. And then when times are good, if interest rates are in a good spot, leasing is still an attractive option. So maybe that's what holds true in this case. I'm not sure, but that's where I think that that's where I see things heading, you know.
Sure. And it is interesting, especially from your credit background. Is this onshore? Is it offshore? I mean, typically it's just okay if it's international. What country is it?
Yeah.
No, no, it's just more almost like a blanket where it's like, all right, and then and I guess things that I don't think about. It's okay. What is the rest of the portfolio?
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's exactly right.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so do you know what year you got in the GE?
And I started working there in 98.
So what, 27 years into equipment finance? I guess
Yeah,
what
well,
is,
the first couple
well,
of
I
those
mean,
years was in the
first couple of
engineering
years.
side. Yeah, so really like 2002.
Sure. So 23 years in equipment finance. Um, I guess one of the questions I like to ask a lot of people on here is what's kept you in this industry for over 2 decades?
Um, yeah, so for me, I think I'm always interested to learn about new businesses, and the easiest way that has happened is by doing deals with these companies and getting introduced to management teams, getting introduced to businesses in different sectors. Obviously, I also thought that having this engineering background has helped me a lot, specifically in the larger machinery aspect of equipment finance, because there's just a level of understanding of how these things work, what all goes into maintaining these pieces of equipment, um, you know all the costs and potential pitfalls and things like that associated with the equipment. I've enjoyed really learning about that aspect of it. Manufacturing lines, how are they put together? Why are they put together the way they are? How would you take them apart and sell them? And this kind of these are all the things that we think about, when we're looking at credit, especially in this large ticket equipment finance space. And I think it's always been interesting to me to stay connected with my engineering roots because of the types of collaterals that we finance. But then, the inquisitive nature of just learning about a lot of different businesses, how they actually work, and being a part of, helping them grow. So that's kind of what's
Sure.
kept me connected to the industry.
Well, and being an engineer with that background, you know how the sausage is made. Then you did an
Right.
audit for a little bit, so you know how it's supposed to be made correctly. And now you can just apply that to, and it's fun, especially when you're dealing with some of those really large ticket items. It's like, okay, what does this machine do? Like, why is it so necessary? And you can go in there
Yeah.
with that background, put a bunch
Yeah.
of pieces together, and I'm sure that your customers appreciate that too, because you're in the trenches, understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, I feel like I do connect every time I go into take a plant tour or walk around a plant floor, and hopefully like my line of questioning and where I'm headed is sort of like, making the person on the other side feel like, okay, I'm building some trust, and this guy understands what I'm doing, and that I hope that comes across, you know.
And then, from obviously you've been with your team for a while now, decade and a half. Um, but other industry relationships, Serene, and kind of what they've meant to your career in equipment finance?
Um, well, that's a good question. I obviously I love to meet my peers and colleagues in the equipment finance space, and we are regularly attending all of the different ELFA conferences and whatnot. Um, I haven't spent too much time, with other industry groups. I do go to some events for the my local ACG chapter.
Oh,
Often make some good introductions, at those events as well. But outside of that, I haven't really spent too much time with other industry groups.
got it. Well, to make sure we just keep having you come to the EF Cares event. Just,
Well, that's been great, and I got an opportunity to go to your golf event in Rockland, at the last one, and I'll be sure to make it to the next one as well. And I think that's been terrific. It's nice that it's more of a sort of social atmosphere, just come together, play golf, and donations for good causes. So that's always nice to do. So thanks for doing that. That's an amazing organization you've created.
no, I was glad Ed Flynn connected us last year. So looking forward to seeing you here in a couple months.
Yeah,
August
absolutely.
4th. August 4th.
Yep.
So I ask everyone who comes on the program to give me a little fun fact about themselves. So what makes you tick outside of equipment finance?
So most people don't know this, but I am a winemaker, and it's been an interest of mine for many years, and started making my first batch of wine in 2017, and have consistently just sort of increased my knowledge base, complexity, and just overall production over the years, and so just to put it in context, the 2024 vintage that we did in August, I bought, I think, 1,500 pounds of grapes, and we made enough juice for one full size wine barrel, which is 59 gallons, and that's going to produce about 400 bottles of wine. So I've been doing this consecutively, each year, trying to just work on, again, it's a lot of like the nerdy engineering stuff, right? Because it's all
Awesome.
chemistry, and it's all a
Sure.
little bit of like, processing, getting your hands, dirty, and just making sure, you're making a product. But my whole goal was like, can I really make wine that somebody would actually buy in a store? That was sort of my goal, like a long time ago, like when I started this venture. And I'll tell you, I'm pretty close to getting there. I actually all the production that we made like during COVID in 2000 and 2001, that wine is ready now to be sold. And so, I'm working with some distributors to get that product into stores and to have it sold. And for me, that would complete sort of this side story of a side project that I've been working on for a long time, and the feedback's been great. A lot of people have tried my wine, and they absolutely love it, and they can't believe that it's something that was made, in my home. You know,
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to buy a bottle from you and just to bring it down to the golf outing. I would love to try that. And then it's like,
that's the you
from
know
there,
what?
if yeah,
That's a done deal. I will definitely bring some to the wine out for the golf outing, and we'll do a little tasting, and I'd love to
now
get
do
the
you have your own press? Like, do you have it in like a cellar? My grandfather made wine, so like his own vineyards, like that was dedication. But like, there's so many questions I have. Like, what grapes do you use? Like, it's like, do
Yeah.
you have your own
So
press or do
look,
you rent the equipment?
so the story is a simple story, but it's in line with like how simple the wine actually is. So my favorite wine is Brunello. For Montalcino, like I was fascinated when I visited Italy, and I learned a lot about the production process of how they make Brunello, and I just I just loved how simple it was. It was just, you press off the wine, it goes through its fermentation stages, and it's just aged for 18 months in like neutral French oak. And they just keep reusing these barrels. Some of these barrels were like 50, 60 years old, and they just keep reusing them. So I was fascinated like how, and then it's like one of my favorite wines, always my go-to to drink. So I was like, okay, well, let me try to see if I can make a American Brunello sourcing the same Sangiovese grapes, but from California. So that's what I'm doing. The story basically is it's the American Brunello. It's grapes sourced from California, Sangiovese only. This is 100% pure Sangiovese wine that's made in exactly the same style as they make Brunello in Italy. 18 months, neutral French oak, all that. So that's basically the journey, the story. That's a selling point. It's a local product made by a local wine guy, and that's the way it's going to be marketed and sold.
That's awesome. I just think of like, some of the, like, it's like, you can make beer and then you put it in a bourbon barrel and you age it for a while. All these different things that we,
It's fascinating. I mean, honestly, like I love learning about all of this stuff. When I visit vineyards, it's like all I'm doing is trying to find like the winemaker so I can ask him like a gazillion questions on how they make
well,
wine, why they do what they
we'll,
do.
we'll have to figure out. So I grew up on 300 acres of farmland. It's Concords, Tabas, Niagara, grapes. So I'm from the Finger Lakes portion of New
Yeah,
York. So at some point we'll have to
which is
meet up
great
there,
wine
and
country.
I can take you to the people that I know that run vineyards. You can geek out with them and talk about their styles and everything else because it's fascinating. It's just you don't run into it very often, so that's awesome. I'm glad
Yeah.
I asked the question.
So that's a fun fact. Definitely, it's definitely a passion project for me. And I was like, I think I can do this. I think I can make a bottle that people would want to pay for in a store. That's kind of
It's,
that's kind of what we're working toward.
it's fantastic. All right, well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That's great. And I guess my last question I have for you is, why should someone want to do business with Saurin, Shah and MidCap Equipment Finance?
So, we started on this. It might be somewhat corny, but like I've had this sort of this 3S strategy, this speed, simplicity, straightforward communication. Like, I've been around, a lot of business leaders going all the way back to GE Capital. I've met lots of different personalities along the way. And if there's any sort of lessons learned from all of that is that, there really is no need in our industry to walk around with like big egos and like all this kind of stuff, right? Just tell it to me straight. Like, what is going on? What do you want to deliver for me? How do you handle yourself? How do you carry your message, and how do you deliver what you say you're going to deliver? And so ever since I started MidCap, that's what I've been preaching to my team. We're going to do it fast. We're not going to waste anybody's time. We're going to be very forward with our communication. If we can do it, great. If we can't do it, we'll tell you we can't do it, and we move on. And it's just a mantra that I think makes a lot of sense for where we're going, and I feel like it's resonated very well with customers.
Perfect. I mean, those are three S's. Almost makes common sense at some point, right? But
I mean,
it's
if
amazing.
this business is very much common sense, I used to have a risk officer back in the day when I started as an associate, and he said, this is the most common sense oriented business that you could be involved with. As long as you're just thinking clearly and just doing things with common sense, you're going to be just fine. And I think that is very true.
Well, excellent, sir. Well, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for sharing your story, and congratulations again on being one of the Monitor Top 30 independents. Congratulations to you and the team. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Excited to
Thank
see
you.
what you guys do in the next 3.5 years. No
So are
pressure. No
we.
pressure. No pressure.
We just hope to keep the train moving forward.
Absolutely. Mr. Rain, thank you very much, sir. And we'll be
All
talking
right.
soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.